There are several public policy related points to be made here. The first is an empirical one, sticking to the example of New Orleans for the moment. The physical setting of New Orleans is subtropical and soggy, lying mostly below sea level, steadily sinking, surrounded by large, powerful, and unpredictable bodies of water, subject to tropical heat, tropical diseases, and violent tropical storms. This is a setting that will always remain challenging in the extreme. It's a comment on the fragility of the place, that as bad as Katrina was, it could easily have been far worse, which means that things far worse will have to be envisioned and planned for if the city is to be fully rebuilt. New Orleans is a city in which one's always been reminded at every turn, in ways both banal and profound, of the degree to which existence itself is contingent and human mastery is an illusion. No one living for long in New Orleans can fail to understand this. It's a lesson of the city's limitations, and particularly its intimate contact with the power and terror of the elements teaches very well. This is emphatically not the lesson, however, that's been drawn from Katrina, or that undergirds much of the debate in its aftermath. When someone is always to blame for calamity, it must mean that everything bad happening in the world can ultimately be attributed to the malfeasance of some human being or human agency, and can be fixed by some other human being or agency. We are, or should be, masters of our existence, and we should never tolerate real or perceived lapses in that mastery. But increases in rational mastery over the physical terms of existence do not necessarily make us happier or safer, and may even have the opposite effect. The more that some things become mastered, the more intolerable are those remaining areas in which our mastery is not yet complete. This parallels very neatly the observation made by Tocqueville. You didn't think I could get through a lecture in Pepperdine policy without mentioning Tocqueville. The observation of Tocqueville that in times of revolutionary upheaval, revolution occurs when social expectations are rising. And his prediction that the growth of social inequality, the growth of social equality in America would exacerbate rather than relieve Americans' sense of class injury and class resentment. The closer that the classes come, the more bitterly resented the distance remaining is. That's Tocqueville's prediction. It can only add to our already keen sense of grievance when we find that the areas eluding our mastery are likely to proliferate in years to come. Storms and earthquakes will continue. We've seen this recently. As will plagues and epidemics and accidents and other things beyond our control, including the likely appearance or reappearance of drug-resistant strains of disease that we thought we had conquered. Even with the finest imaginable Department of Homeland Security, there will likely be other 9/11 attacks, other scares, poisonings of water systems, subway and bus and ship bombings, and instruments of terror that few of us can now imagine. The illusion of mastery has already made it hard for us to absorb the blow of such events in a mature way and move beyond them productively. I would reference here the endless parade of lawsuits relating to 9/11, 9 years after the event, still in the state of New York. Instead, we spend more and more of our time asking ourselves, who are we angry at? These considerations, I think, have immense general implications for those of you who will be working in the arena of public policy. And in these final words, it is with these considerations that I want to leave you. I wish I could be more upbeat. But first of all, let me urge you to free yourselves from the idea of mastery to the extent that you can. And recognize that most political problems involve intractable conflicts between contending interests and parties, conflicts that can sometimes be managed or ameliorated, but only rarely solved, and that most attempts at comprehensive solution bring a whole train of new problems in their wake. In other words, you need to acquire a particular kind of wisdom, inseparable from experience, a virtue called prudence, which constantly weighs the imaginable against the possible, and learns constantly by paying close attention to life's actual, specific examples. But then, having freed yourselves, you will then have to free those whom you serve. Or to put it more accurately and discouragingly, you will have to deal with a public that has become habituated by the false promise of mastery to a set of unrealistic expectations that simply cannot be met. And I'm not here talking only about the false promises of particular politicians, but the illusion of mastery that makes us so gullible to those kinds of false promises. That does not mean there cannot be joy and satisfaction in the service of that public. And it certainly doesn't mean that you should, in a sort of technocratic arrogance, stop listening to it. But I predict that it will be your primary task in the years ahead to instruct that public, not about the glories of public policy so much as about its limits. Good luck in that task. You will need it. Thank you very much.